Hello. What you doing? Oh, I'm just starting class, so okay. Bye. Hey, sorry.
Oh,
Were
you're
you
fine.
waiting long?
No.
Okay. Um, all right. I just need to change my shirt, so I'll be right back. You got the waiting room?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
No, make me a host.
Oh. Hold on. Cool.
Okay.
Cool. All right, babe.
I'm gonna wait until 6:30 exactly.
Oh, God. Anybody that we need to be concerned about?
No, so if they're not on that list, they're here, right? The one
Yeah.
that we were talking about is coming back.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's try to manage my hair today because it's just washed and it's like freaking everywhere. Marathon lesson. You can let people in. Are you in twice?
Yeah.
Okay, so we should have 27 total. I really need to figure out the music thing. It's too quiet. Donald's laughing at me. Are you laughing at me? Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm gonna get Alana to give me the password to the Spotify. And then you can listen to my music. Just kidding. Yes, you guys will be able to make a request. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, Jessica. Okay. All right, we're gonna get started on time today. We have 2 lessons to go through, so we're gonna do a 50-minute lesson on loops, and then we're gonna do a 50-minute, about a 50-minute lesson on a walkthrough of a problem, a exercise, that involves prime numbers and random and taking in user input and looping, lots of fun stuff, and pseudocode. So before we get started, Jessica, you have a couple of announcements.
I do. So the content going forward, including tonight, is more complex than the things that we've done so far, and it's going to move really quickly. So we need to get through lecture to make sure that we hit all the points that you guys need to know. So for questions, I'm going to ask you to put the questions that you have in chat. If the question needs to be discussed like out loud with Asha answering it, then I will make time for that to happen. And if I can answer the question, I'll answer it. I have noticed that some of the questions will be answered if we just allowed lecture to finish, to run its course. So to make the most effective use of the time, just put your questions in chat. And if it's something immediate, then we can certainly pause and address it right then.
Also, everyone should have noticed that I put in to instructor announcements over the weekend that your assessments have been graded, that comments have been put in to Canvas, that everyone should refactor their code at this point and resubmit it by, I think I put it Saturday by 11:59. And then we'll go from there. Also, Jessica, what was the other question? Oh, please make sure that you guys are keeping up to date on your homework. It would behoove you not to wait till Friday at 11:59 or 11:50 to turn your homework in. It does not help you if you're waiting to if we're doing an assignment today, which is not due until a week from this Friday, if you have questions about that content, waiting 6 lectures to get to that content and then do the homework, considering the pace we're going to be going at, I highly recommend that that you guys keep up with the homework, try to turn it in as close to the lesson as possible. This way, if you have questions, because we're building knowledge based on the previous lessons. So if there's something that you're unsure about, then that's just going to build upon, it's going to become a snowball. So it's really important that you do that. Also, you know, I just want to put it out there that I also put a message out there into the help channel that it would be really good for you guys to set up like study groups that are weekly, that you guys decide as the cohort that, you know, these 3 times a week we're going to meet. Whoever shows up, and you guys help each other. It is part of the JTC philosophy that the cohort is helping each other and supporting each other, because the end goal is for you guys all to graduate, take the assessment if that's what you would like for flagship, and get into flagship. So the more, the merrier. Okay. Other than that, Jessica, oh, there's a question about whether we're going to go over the assessment in class, the solution. I'm happy to do so. I think that maybe I need to work it into the lesson. Then what we'll do is we'll take a little bit of time out of breakouts, and for you guys to, for me to go over the assessment exercise. And lastly, oh, now I just lost my train of thought. There's like 50 million things going on in chat right now. Oh yeah, so there will be new breakout rooms. These will be your permanent breakout rooms starting today. You will also have new partners. Your partners will also be new, I think. I believe so. Your partner will be new to you. And starting today, you will have a weekly partner exercise in addition to your regular homework, which you guys will need to do in driver navigator style and record that session and submit that. Okay. What we are trying to do is get everybody in the mode of interview style solution making. Okay. So it's not necessary that you have to record the whole thing, just 10, 15 minutes and you know, all good. Okay. Other than that, we're going to get going. Okay. There's information about the recordings in the README of the assignment tonight. So no worries. We'll help you through it. Okay. So today we're going to go over loops. Jessica, is there anything that I need to address right away? Okay. So we are starting loops today. Let me share my screen. Okay, everyone can see my VS Code? Jess?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Everyone's very quiet. Okay, so we're going to be going over VS Code. Oh my God, loops today. We want to make sure that you're comfortable how to iterate through a loop, and also how to iterate through individual characters in a string using a loop. And then we'll go through a while loop, and we'll go through different examples. So what is a loop? So you kind of think of a loop as an apply all. So in loops, in Python, you iterate over a sequential list, like an item, like an object, like a list, or a string. So, but I want to apply whatever method or function to every single item in that list. So we're going to use a for loop. Okay. Iterate means to go through every item. It is a syntactically, every coder will use the word iterate. So essentially it means that you're going to go through one by one each item in the list or each index in a string and do something to it. Okay. Rather than repeating your code over and over, we're going to use a loop. Okay. It allows us to perform many operations with just a few lines of code. Okay. So essentially for every loop starts with the syntax that up here. So every loop starts with a 4. You're going to do an X and then in, and you're going to call whatever it is that you're looping through. So just for this sake, I'm going to say Y. Typically, you would not save your list as the letter Y. You would not assign it that name because it doesn't tell you and it's so ambiguous. You would not ever use that. Okay. So basically you're saying for each X in the list, right? Then I'm going to do a colon. I'm going to hit enter. And then I'm going to say, do something to it, right? So for each X, I want to print X. Okay. So for each item in Y, I want to print X. So if I have Y as Y equals a list. So let's just say A, B, C, D, okay. I want to print it, right? So it's going to go through, and I'm sorry, I keep scrolling up and down. I'll fix that in just 1 second. So for every X in Y, I'm going to print X. So it's going to do step by step. It'll go through A, B, C, and D, and it'll print that X. Okay, so let's, get into my folder. I'm going to run save. I'm going to run Python 3. And this is loops.py.
Hey, Asha, is there a reason the CD is outside the bracket?
Yeah, it's just because my mouse is moving around. Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, and you'll see here, there's a syntax error, right? And it caught that error. My mouse is moving around. Okay, so what's happening here?
They're strings, Asha. They
Yeah.
don't have
Okay, so the difference is that I made it a string. If I called A just as itself without the quotes, it's looking for a variable. Okay, so it's saying here, this is a great debugging thing. When you guys get bugs in your code, make sure you look in your terminal. It's going to, for the most part, give you a good clue about what's going on. It's saying A is not defined. So without the quotes, it looks at A as a variable. Okay. So when I ran it with A without the quotes, it's saying it's not defined because I never assigned the variable A. Okay, so I think that was Wesley. Thank you very much. Try it again. And there you go. Okay, it ran through each object in the list and it printed it. Straightforward enough. Okay, so let's do another example. Comment this out. So here I have a list of names. I have Alice, Bob, and Charlie in a list called names. Again, really terrible use of, clear list things, but, should not use the variable name that's that ambiguous, but it's okay for this. So I'm going to say for name in names, names is my list. Okay. So you want to make sure whatever you're iterating through is called in your for loop. Okay. And then you're going to define what the individual step is going to be. So this could be anything. This could be let's see, cup. Okay, it could be cup. Okay, then I would have to change this to cup. So for each cup in the names list, I'm going to print an F string that says hello, comma, the name. Okay, because again, I'm using an F string, but I use a curly bracket. I call the variable, okay, the object, close the curly bracket, finish my string, and close with a double quote. Here I'm using double quotes. Okay, clear it and run it, and there you go. It's going to iterate 3 times because I have 3 objects. Okay, and it's going to print each name after comma hello with an exclamation point. Any questions so far? Okay, All right, so let's go through. We talked about the fact that you could change this to anything and just make sure, typically, whatever you're calling here, whatever you're calling as your iterator variable, this is called an iterator variable. So here, I'm gonna put that here. This is your iterator variable equals cup. Okay, so that's the name of this object in this for loop. Okay, your iterator variable typically is going to be singular. Okay, it should be singular because you're going step by step in a list that has multiple objects. So you don't want to say cups, right? Because you're not looking at multiple cups at the same time. You're just looking at one cup. Okay, I'll change this back to name, because that's what makes more sense. And this is name. So when you're doing your for loop, you could just say for X in name, right? Again, this doesn't make a lot of sense when you're reading your code 6 months from now, because if your code is 1,000 lines long, you're going to say, what's X? Okay, be specific. Okay, so now let's just say I want to, I'm going to use this example again. So you can do anything you want here, right? So if I want to do another print statement here that has nothing to do with, like, I'm not calling anything here, right? I'm not calling the name. I'm not doing anything with the iterator variable. I'm just saying print hello world for every time it loops through my list. Okay, so now what's going to happen is it's in between each iteration here. It's going to say hello world. Did I save it? I did. So here you see in my terminal, hello Alice, and then hello world. Then it iterates again. Hello Bob, hello world. Iterates again. Hello Charlie, hello world. Okay. Now, the way you know that it's finished is that I'm going to come out of the for loop. Okay. So how many times is it going to print hello hi computer? Can someone come off mute? Or Jessica, can you call on somebody?
Just that.
Once.
Okay, and who's that?
Once.
Okay.
Should just do it once.
Okay, tell me why once.
It's once. Is it anyone or?
Say your name. That's Ephraim, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm like learning everybody's voice. Okay, perfect. Okay, so tell me why once.
It's once because you indented the print's high computer, and it's only calling to the name. It's only calling once because it's calling to the function of the for name and name, and
That's
it's
right.
only going to say once that time.
Right. So your loop is going to see, your loop will do any of the operations that are indented under it. Once it's finished with the loop, right, it comes back out to the regular indentation and it says, okay, what do I do now? So now here it's going to say, at the very end, it's going to say hi computer. Okay, just once. Perfect. Okay. Okay, so let's do a different example. Let's do some math. I'm sure everyone's sick of seeing square roots at this point, but okay. So here we have a list named numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to say for num in numbers. So you could typically say number for number in numbers, right? And then I'm going to say number here. Change this one. Okay. So my iterator variable is number. The list I'm iterating through is numbers. Okay. For every iteration, I'm going to square the number I'm on, and then I'm going to print an F string using the number and the result that's been assigned to it, the square. Okay. So let's see. So here you see that for each iteration, it's going to give me the original number that it's iterating through, and then the square of it, because I'm using an F string again. Any questions? Okay.
Sorry, Jaquan, can you, I don't understand your question in the chat. Can you just tell me what you mean by the space at the end once you're ready to loop?
Yeah, my bad for not being clear enough. Basically, like how she got it when she indented it. Basically, she just skipped line 10 and just went to line 11. I ain't know if it matters or not.
So here,
right.
So typically syntactically for Python, you want to put a space, an empty space when your for loop ends.
Okay.
So if I would go here, you would want to put a it's either a single space or double space depending on what you're doing, but we're not doing classes here, so we're just doing a typical for loop. So if I want to do a print statement here and say just hi, right, I would leave one line empty, because, and this is good for your reader, whoever's going to come after you, right, automatically knows their I line stops at this blank, right? So you want to be conscious of that, as you know, are you squishing all of your code, and it makes it hard for whoever's coming after you to try to debug or to try to figure out what your code is doing. If you put a blank space there, it stops your I line at that point, and you know that something new is occurring. Okay.
All right. Appreciate it.
No worries. Okay, so again, forgot my quotes. And there's my high. Okay, again, it's dedented outside of my for loop, so that's why it's only printing once. Okay, so now we're going to go on to, this is a traditional for loop, right, where you're looping through a list one object at a time. Okay, so now what happens if I want to print out, I have this string. Okay, so I have a string, and my string is Python is awesome. I want to print every letter individually, right, in my terminal, one by one, on a separate line. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do for character in my string. Oh, okay. So here I have a string. I've assigned my string Python is awesome. I've created a for loop, and I said for each character in my string, I want to print the character. Okay, and the result is going to be right here. So you'll see Python is awesome, including the spaces, because the space is still an object. Okay, individually, because again, it's looping, right? For every loop, it starts a new line. Okay, any questions? Okay, do I have a question? I think James has his hand up first.
So I'm pretty sure I'm jumping ahead, but are you going to show us how it can do instead of individual letters, how it would it still go Python, then another spot is, and then another spot awesome, so it's like each individual, if that makes any sense?
Your loop for every
Right,
yeah, you were jumping ahead there. Yeah.
Okay, I was like, I'm not sure if I was, so I was like,
That's
okay.
All good. Sandra, you have a question.
Yeah, just really quick. When I want to clarify, when you say I line, are you referring to like your eye sees the break in the line, or eyes in iteration? But
eyes and you literally your eye, your vision, right? So as you're reading code, this blank line, right, gives you a stopping point, and it's an indicator to whoever's reading your code that something new is happening, right? If I group all this together, right? It just, your reader doesn't know, like, is this all supposed to be together? Is it all related to it? Like, is one related to the other? So by putting spaces, you're indicating to whoever's debugging or whoever's looking at your code that there's something new happening.
Thank you.
You're welcome. James, you have another question? You put your hand down then. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to do,
Hang on, Wesley, do you have a question?
Oh, yes, I just wanted to clarify, the character, that's not a preset, variable when you go to search through a string. That's just the variable that I'm choosing to call it.
yeah, so I can call this whatever I wanted. I could say X here, right? I can say C, I can say B, I can do whatever I want. It's still going to do the same thing. Right? You just want to be specific. You don't want to actually do that, because then again, your reader doesn't know. Oh, I commented all this out. Your reader doesn't know, like, what does C mean to you, like to me or to you, if you're looking at this 6 months from now, right? If your code, this C is being referenced somewhere else way down the line, you're going to have to backtrack all the way to define what C is. You don't want to do that. So you typically are going to say character, and you're going to be specific, right? If you're doing a statement regarding my string, you would say my opinion, like if this is my opinion, right? String. That's like, you want to be that specific. Okay. You don't want your variable names to be like extremely long, but you want them to be obvious to what you're doing. Okay. So then I would have to change this. I could spell while I'm typing. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to do a nested loop. Okay, so I'm going to have, I'm going to copy this. I need this. I have my string. So, and then I'm going to define, okay, so what I'm doing is I'm defining the string, okay, my string. Then I'm defining a list of vowels, okay, A, E, I, O, U, okay, all strings, they're all in quotes. Then I'm going to say for every character in my string, so it's going to iterate through every character starting with P, okay, if that character is a vowel, I'm sorry, yes, is in vowels, which means it's going to look at vowels and it's going to say, does my character exist in this list? Okay. If that is true, it's going to print a F string saying that character is a vowel. Otherwise, if it's not true, it's going to print that character is not a vowel. Okay. Did I save? I did. Okay. So you see here that it starts with a P. Okay. Starts with the first one. And then it said, then you go to here. It's going to test, is that character in the vowels list? Okay. Does P exist? And this is uppercase P. Remember, uppercase and lowercase in Python do matter. It does matter. It makes a difference. They're not equal. Okay. Is uppercase P in my vowel list? It is not. So it's going to say it's not true. It's going to be a false. So it goes to else, and it's going to print the second string. Okay. Any questions there? No. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to go through range. Okay, range is a little bit different. It allows you to iterate a certain number of, so say I want to print the numbers 1 through 5. I can use the range function to accomplish this. Range is useful and it gives us all the integers from 0, not including the second call. Okay, so here I'm going to show you. Okay, so I'm ranging through 1 to 6. Okay, and 6 is exclusive. Okay, so it's not going to include the 6. Okay, so here I'm going to say, and then I'm using that. What I'm doing is I'm using the character again in an F string. Okay, so it's going to print the numbers 1 through 5. Okay, so it's going to start with 1 and it's all going to go all the way to the 6, but it's going to not include the 6. So I should see 5 F strings being numbers 1 through 5. Any questions there?
No.
I have a question as far as the semicolon. I mean, sorry, the colon.
Mhm.
Why is the colon in the Princeton in line 38? Why is the colon there? Why is the colon there?
Oh, this is because it's in my F string. Hold on, let me make my screen bigger.
Okay.
Here. See right here, it's part of my F string. So I
Okay.
wanted to print the word number and then a
and colon.
colon and a
Mhm.
space because there's a space there. And then the number that I'm iterating through using
Okay, I
range.
get it.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that better for you guys to see? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's do, range can come in useful when you're looping through lists using their index. So you can say, instead of you knowing, like, I want to iterate through 1 through 5. What if I want to iterate through, like, this Python is awesome, right? Starting at 0, ending at the n, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? That's 6. So I would do from 0 to 7. Okay, so let's take a look at an example of that. Okay, so here we're going to have notes. Oh, I did not do it. Be nice to me. Okay, so we have a list of lowercase strings. Okay, so then I want to iterate through the indices of this lowercase list. And now I'm going to be a little bit cheeky here. Okay, not only, what if this list is 1,000 strings long? Okay, I don't know how many there are. So I'm going to use the length function to find the length of the list. Okay, it will automatically iterate through the length of the list and it'll print it because I'm doing range. It'll print it. Now, what is it going to print out? What's it going to print out? Can someone, Jessica, can you call on somebody?
Yeah, Andrew Borda, do you have any idea what this loop will print out when we print I? You're on mute if you're talking.
Would it print the number of the words in there? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yes, it's actually not going to include 6. It's going to go through 0 through 5 because remember your indexes start with
the
0,
index.
right? Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
so it's going to give you the index number because I'm printing I in the range of the length, but I'm not calling the actual, I'm iterating through a range. I'm not iterating through the individual items in this list. I'm iterating through the indice of the list. Okay, that's the difference between a regular for loop here. Here, I'm iterating through each character in the string. Okay, here I'm iterating through the index of the string. Okay, so here, you see I'm getting the index numbers of the number of items in the list. So 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now let's use this. Okay. So here, instead of printing I want to do it, use an F string. Okay. Whole thing. Oh, Jessica, we have a couple hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, hey Asha. So quick question. What if we didn't use if we didn't put the length? Would there be a syntax error or would it print something else? Like if we just remove that length and just did range
Well,
lower?
let's see. So it doesn't know what to do, right? Because it can't interpret an object as an integer, because range requires you to have an integer in its parentheses, right? In the argument that the parameter that you're calling, it's requiring you to give you, you are required to provide it with some sort of integer so it knows how many times to go through it. Okay. So by just saying list, it doesn't know what you want. It doesn't know what to do with this list because you haven't told it how many times. Right? We're just saying, hey, there's a list here, and I'm telling range indicates that you're specifying the number of times to go through that list, not just arbitrarily as a for loop go through everything.
So it's safe to say that range and length will go hand to hand in a for loop? Like no matter what, if you use range, you're gonna always use length?
Typically you will use length, yes, if you don't know what the length is. Okay. Is that the only question? I thought there was more than one hand. Okay. So here I'm going to, okay, so now we have list again, right? Lowercase list. And now I want to loop through the indexes of the lowercase list, and I want to also access the actual element that it's iterating at. Okay. So here, same for loop for I in range of length of the lower list. Okay. So it's going to start with this one, which is 0. Okay. I'm going to use an F string to print the index is I, which is going to be the number, the index number, and the element is, I'm going to call, as we learned in indexing, I'm going to call the list and I'm going to tell it whatever's at that index, print it. Okay, so now instead of seeing just the number I, the index number, I'm going to see the index number and the actual object because now I have called it using indexing of a list in a for loop. Okay, so now I'm going to print. So here you have the index is 0, the first iteration through the loop. So it's going to start at index 0. And the element is the word here. Okay, then it iterates through all of them. And when it's finished, it just stops because there's nothing else after it. No hands. Okay. We're going to keep going. Okay, so we want to talk about the difference between a while loop and a regular loop. Okay, so we've talked about loops today, regular loops, and a regular loop will continue until you indicate it to stop. Okay, so let's just do something here. I'm going to say if I equals 4, I'm going to break. And you don't really need an else, but I'm going to put it in here just for the sake of. So here, what I'm saying is if your index is the number 4, double equals. If this is true, break means stop the loop. So it'll never get to the number 5. Okay, Otherwise, if it's not a 4, print. See, so here I should see that it stops at number 4. Oh, I'm sorry. Because this is range, you're stopping at number 3. Because what's happening is once it's number 4, it stops printing. So it's not going to print the number, the fifth iteration. Okay, so does anybody have any question about what I just did here? If I put this print statement before the if statement, okay, what's the difference? Can someone raise their hand? Or actually, Jessica, can you call on somebody?
Yeah, Jay, what do you think will happen?
It'll print the 4th or the 5th line.
Yep. So it'll print it because it's printing before it's doing your Boolean check. And then it'll stop. So as Jay just said, what you can see right here is that it actually got, contrary to the last time we looped through, where the print statement was after the Boolean check. You have, we print first, and then we do a Boolean check. So here, it got to the index 4, it printed that line, and then it checked it and said, if I'm number 4, just stop. Okay, versus before here, it checks the number first and then it stops. That's why it didn't print in this example. Okay, does anybody have any questions before I go into a while loop?
I have a question, specifically, excuse me, concerning the definition of a loop. You said a loop will continue until you tell it to stop.
It will continue through the length of whatever you are iterating through. Right?
Okay.
Yeah. So if there's 1,000 item objects in your list, it'll go through 1,000 of the iterations until you, or unless you give it a conditional for it to stop at some point, right? You can do an if statement, right? I'm going to show you a while statement now. So that's a good segue to a while loop, right?
Okay.
How do we stop it? Okay. So here, a while loop continues to iterate until a logical condition is met. Okay. Unlike loop, where it runs for a certain number of times, that certain number of times is either, in this case, I gave it logic, or the length, the number of objects in that whatever I'm iterating through, right? A while loop runs for an undefined number of times while it's waiting for a condition to be met. Okay, so let's look at an example of that. So here, I'm setting my, oh geez, I'm sorry for the scrolling. I sincerely apologize. I'm setting a count to 0. And I'm saying while my count is less than 5, print count. Okay. Then once it prints count, I'm going to change count by adding 1 to it. Okay. So the first iteration, it's going to print the number 0 because it starts with 0, right? It's initialized at 0. Then once it goes through one iteration of the entire loop, then it's going to say, okay, I've now printed 0. Now what do? I need to add 1 to myself. Okay, now reassign my value to count plus 1. Okay. So now once you go through the first loop, then your count here then becomes a 1. Okay. Once it reaches 5, as long as it's less than 5, not less than equal than 5, okay, it will continue. When it's finished, when it reaches a number that's greater than 5, so at this point it would be 5 or greater, right? Because we're not doing an equal sign here. It'll print the word done. Okay. What did I do here? It's giving me an indentation error. Where did I not? Here. Hold on. It gave me an indentation error, unexpected indent block after 4 on line 51, because this for loop right here was not commented out. So after a for loop, it always looks for an indented operation, right? And this count was not indented. So it's like, what are you trying to say to me? So it gave me an indentation error. So now I'm going to comment this out. Okay. Okay, so run it again. Here's your 0. It started at 0. Then it went to 1 because it did count plus 1. And it continued on until it got to 4. When it got to 4, it did count plus 1, right? It became 5, and then it's not less than 5. Okay? All right. One thing to be really leery about when you're doing while loops is being careful not to do and like create yourself like a loop that doesn't ever stop. So let's look at this.
Will your computer shut down? Because I saw that in the video. She said don't do it, but like
what you would do is you don't want to do it on your regular I mean, you're watching it while you're running code, but if you're like at work and you do it, you have to stop your terminal. Okay, so here, why would this become a continuous loop? So Jessica, you want to call him? Oh,
Yeah,
whoever
Sandra.
raised their hand. Okay,
Sandra, can you tell us?
Because that condition will always be true.
right. So it'll keep going because it's always greater than or equal to 0, right? You set count at 0, and you're saying while the count is greater than or equal to 0, print. So it's never going to stop. Okay, so then if it doesn't stop, you have to stop your terminal. So either depends on which computer you're at. If like I do Control X or Control Z on my terminal, if you're on Windows, someone wants to come off mute and give say what the stop is in terminal, as far as what to do if you're in a loop.
Control C.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so any questions about loops here?
Hold on. Ephraim had a question that I'm not sure I understand. Ephraim,
Okay.
the question that you put in chat, can you ask that question?
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, so I was asking about as far as like, and because can you scroll up where it says the -5, like right there, line 58? Why did I guess the question was really why if it's count less than 5, right? Why didn't incorporate floats? Because technically a float is still less than 5 if it's 4.99 or 4.9, or it's just.
Well, it's because I am iterating by a full integer, right? So
Okay.
that's why. If I did 0.1, it would, it's different, right? It would give me 10 steps for each number, right? So if I do a 10, right? So yeah, because I'm iterating by a count of 1, that's why.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Jessica, is there something else before I call in Edwin?
No, I just want to make one comment really quickly. I know some people are coding along with you, and that's what I did for most of my when I was in class too. And then it was actually you that gave me the suggestion that I not do that, because you might think you need to to code exactly what Asha is doing right now, and then so you understand it. I would ask you to consider trying both, one lesson, one class where you just watch. And you can, if you want to see what she did, go back and watch the video later, but it may serve you better to just watch and not try to keep up and code along, because you kind of get distracted and not missing what's in her terminal and missing and seeing where she's scrolling. So I just want to make that comment really quickly, because it took me to the end of my cohort to figure out for me that it was better to not code along with the instructor.
Edward.
My question is regarding the syntax for the while loop.
Mhm.
Does it matter? You see in line 67 and 68 how you wrote print count and then count equals count plus one. Does it matter if of where that print statement is? Does it have to come before that variable?
No,
Okay, so it doesn't matter. You could interchange 66. Okay.
because I'm not doing conditional here, right?
Okay.
It matters in if you put a condition here. So you can also nest an if statement under here, like odd and even, if it's divisible by, like all these things, right? In that case, it's going to matter. But in this case, because there's no conditional, it doesn't matter which order I put it in. Versus the example we had here, where we're looping through using range, and I put a conditional in, and it does make a difference where I put my print statement. Do I want my print statement to be before the conditional check, or do I want it after? This goes back to the whole thing of knowing what your output is, your expected output is, before you write your code. Okay. And this is why this whole concept of unit testing is that we write the unit test before we write the exercise, because I want to know what is my expected output, right? Then I write the exercise. And then I write a solution, right? For us. But it's like to test the unit test, right? So your unit test and your solution, what your output is, should be at the foremost of your mind before you write code. What do I expect to see in the terminal? Awesome. Okay, so it's 7:22. We can take a break, and unless anyone else has questions, and then we'll come back and we will do the prime number guessing game. We'll code it out. Cool. All right, so we can just, how long you want to do? 15 minutes? You want to do 10 minutes?
We'll do 15 minutes.
Okay, cool.
Let's come back at 7:35 Eastern time. A little less than 15.
Jess, are you going on break?
No.
You want to go into breakout room real quick?
Yeah, let me open a couple. Yeah.
Okay, so we have about a minute before we get back into lesson, and if you guys want to shuffle back. Any question? Oh, I see something in chat. Okay. Any questions before we jump into the exercise, the walkthrough today?
Is
Everyone's
there, how do we find the our new partners and our new pods? Did you post that, or that's?
They haven't been posted yet.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. And it may be first thing tomorrow morning before they get posted. Just trying to work some details out.
Would it still be, are y'all still gonna be mindful of like the time zones?
We're trying to be, yes.
Just
Yeah. Yeah. If your partner is not in the same time zone as you, and it's a serious problem, like it's the big problem, just let us know and we'll try to figure something out.
okay.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so today we are going to, Jessica, are you back?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, all right. So we're going to be doing a walkthrough of an exercise that we are going to essentially, let me pull it up. It's a prime number guessing game, okay? So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to generate a random number, and we're going to ask the user's input whether they think the number is going to be a prime number, or not a prime number, but they can't see what the number is. Okay. And then at the end, what we're going to do is we're going to do a Boolean check and see, was the user correct in their guess, and we're going to test whether the number is prime or not. Okay. And we're going to be using the random function with a library within Python to help us generate the random numbers. Okay, we're going to start off with pseudocode and start thinking through pseudocode, just like we were talking about earlier, figuring out what our expected output is before we even start coding, and think through our code before we actually like write code. Okay, and right now your exercises are very they're strict, and in the sense where, you know, we've set up the functions, we're telling you do X, Y, and Z. In the next, I would say, 2 weeks, you will be told, you'll be given like, this is the expected output. This is what your function name needs to be, but we're not going to give you the framework of these steps. It'll be, you decide for yourself what steps you want to take to get to that that solution. Okay. So okay, so let's get started. Let me share my screen. Oh, a couple other things. There's going to be the random is going to be set between 2 and 100. And does someone want to raise their hand and tell me what a prime number is? Peter, we haven't heard from you today.
It's a number divisible only by 1 and itself.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. So, all right, let me share my screen. Okay. Okay. So we're going to generate a random number. We're going to ask the player to guess whether it's a prime number or not. And at the end, we're going to basically do a print statement that states whether what the number is, and if it's prime or not, and whether they were correct or not. So this is what pseudocode looks like. Okay, pseudocode can be as descriptive as you want, or like as, you know, like bland, I guess is the right word. Okay. So here, what I'm going to do first is we're going to explain what a prime number is to the player. We're going to then generate a random number, and we're going to, oh, this is just the explanation, sorry. We're going to import the random module, which is a library within Python, which allows you to call random and tell Python between what two parameters you want that number to be. Okay, so here I'm going to say that I want my my guess number, my random number, to be between 2 and 100. Again, I'm trying to, you know, not make the code run really long. I just want it to be a short and sweet lesson, because if the larger this number is, the longer it's going to take your code to run, right? So if this is 10,000, the iterations in your for loop are going to figure out whether it's prime or not, are going to be longer. I'm going to be using a for loop, and I'll show you why. So I'm going to prompt the player to enter their guess, 1 for prime, 0 for not prime, and then we're going to store that as player underscore guess. So we're going to assign a variable player guess, and I'm going to give them 2 options, 1 or 0. Okay. All right, so then I'm going to set prime is prime to true. Okay, I'm just going to assume that the number is true until it becomes false, and then we're going to go through our for loop. Okay, so our for loop will change this variable to false if it's not if it's not prime. Okay, so in my for loop, I'm going to check if that random number is prime. I'm going to initialize starting between I and 2. I is less than or equal to the square root of the number, because as Peter just said, it's divisible by itself, right? Or 1. Okay. If the number here, if the number is divisible by I, which is the index, the iteration, the iterator variable, then I'm going to set it to false. So it's going to start with 2, 3, 4, 5, and then if it's divisible by until the square root of that number, if it is divisible, then it's going to set it to false. And then it's going to break out of that loop. Okay. Otherwise, it'll continue to the next iteration up 1. So if I'm on 2 and it's not divisible by 2, then I'm going to iterate that I to I plus 1, and then I'm going to divide by 3. Then if it's not, divide by 4. Okay, until I figure out whether it's true or false. Now, I understand this is the long way around to figure out whether it's prime or not, but we want to demonstrate loops. Okay. Then I want to compare the player's guess with is prime. Is prime, don't forget, is the Boolean true or false. If the player guessed correctly, then we're going to print a congratulations. If not, we're going to say, well, this is not right. This is, my pseudocode's obviously wrong right here. It's not a prime number. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. That is correct. There is 2 scenarios. Sorry. They either guess correctly prime or false, prime or not, right? So either way, they could be right. Otherwise, they're wrong. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to start a new file. Okay. All right. So let's start with the code. So the first thing I want to do, like I said, is I'm going to import random. Okay. So again, random is a function. It's a library within. It's a function within Python that will allow us to retrieve a random, you can define a random number, you can define a random like letter. You have to determine to Python what you want randomized, okay? So here I'm importing random. Then I want to set a variable, random number equal, and then call my random, okay? So I'm going to say random number equals random. And I want them to be integer. So this is something new to you. We haven't used random int yet. This is a method, random int, okay? So I'm going to say I want a random integer between 2 and 100, okay? Again, I want to use a smaller number as the ending because I don't want Python to be being crazy and taking a really long time to run. So, okay, so that's the first thing. So now we have to take in the player's guess, okay? So again, I want the player to guess. We're setting a variable player guess to an integer. We're looking for an input, and we want to tell them guess if the number is prime, 1 for prime, 0 for not prime. Okay. Any questions so far? What we're doing here? Okay, now I want to set my Boolean variable to true because my assumption is that it's going to be true and then prove it false, okay? Proving false in my for loop. So I'm going to say for I in range, I'm going to start with the number 2 because again, Peter told us that it's divisible by 1 or the square root of, I'm sorry, by 1 or itself, okay? So again, to make my life easier, I'm going to say we're going to iterate through all of the divisible numbers between 2 and the square root of the number that we're testing, okay? The random number, okay? So I'm going to say random number times 0.5. Now, this is the hard way to do square root. There is a square root function in Python. It's sqrt, but I just wanted to show you how you could do square root using the exponential operator. Okay, so you just do the exponential and you do times a half. Okay, now as we learned in lesson earlier, when you're doing range, okay, it does not include the last number. So if my number is 49 and I find the square root of it, right, the square root of 49 is 7, I want to test 7. Okay, so by adding 1 here, right, I'm ensuring that I test 7 because in range, it's going to stop at 6. It's not inclusive of the number that is on the right of the comma. So by adding 1, I'm ensuring that I'm including that last number. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions about why we're doing that? Okay, so now I'm going to say if random number is divisible by I, and this is division, okay? This is the
modulo.
Thank you. It's the module, and it's going to give me if it's an even division, okay? So it'll give me whatever's to the right of the decimal point, okay? If that's equal to 0, then I know that right? If it is prime or not prime, right? I'm going to set it to false. Okay, and then I want to stop. Anyone have any questions? Okay, so then I'm going to say if is prime, okay, and the player guess equals 1. So here we're saying it is prime, right? So can someone raise their hand and tell me what and is? What is the conditional and? Miles.
And is where the what comes before and what comes after both equal true.
Absolutely. Okay, so then, so if these are both true, I'm going to say, I'm going to print a congratulations statement that it's a prime number. Okay. And I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do an elif. I'm just going to copy this and I'll change this. So it's an elif now, right? And now I'm going to say if it's not is prime and the player guess is 0. Okay, go ahead, Bennett.
Yes, thank you. I want to go back up to line 8 and the number square root times 0.5. I always thought square root was double asterisk 2.
That's we're doing that's to get the square root. If I put 7 in to get the square, that's square.
The squaring.
That's squaring.
Exponents, right.
So if I do random, I'm just going to type here, random 2, that's going to give, and my random number is 7, it's going to give me 49. So that's exponential, right? Here I'm doing times half, which is the square root. This is
square root. Okay, I'm sorry, square root.
Yes.
Okay, I was just thinking
square root.
Yes.
Yes. Listen, when I wrote it too, I was like, what am I doing? I don't want
Right,
to
okay,
I don't want to do SQRT because I want to show you guys how to use like you would typically not use this operator. You would use this SQRT function.
Right.
Just like you have int here. But I want to show you like how versatile operators are in any code that you're writing, right? If you can't remember what square root is, or if you know what the function is, right? And you're in an interview, there's always a workaround, right? So I just wanted to show you something a little bit.
Okay. You said square root, but my mind
All
said
good.
the
All
square
good.
of right. Thank
All
you.
good. You're welcome. Okay.
Asha, before you go on, will you just circle back to modulo real quick and explain it one more time? Because for some people, they're seeing it the first time. So
why don't you explain it?
Okay, I'll explain it as best I can. It is the percent sign, but don't equate it with percentage. What it will give you is the remainder of the division. And what we're using it for here is, so if the remainder after you divide is 0, then the number that you're looking for is an even number. So you're very frequently going to use the modulo operator. If the remainder after division is 1, it will be an odd number. And sorry, that's my baby. And that relates to the prime numbers, because prime numbers are divisible by one of themselves and nothing else.
Okay. So we don't want, if we're testing for prime, if it's divisible by the index, whatever we're iterating at. So if I'm on the number 3, if my just say, for example, I use the number 50 as my random number. The square root of 50, well, 50 is not squared. Okay, so 40, let's do 49, okay? 49, the square root of 49 is 7, right? Now, if we're on the iteration of the number 3, okay? We're on the loop, right? And we say, is my number random number divisible by 3. Okay. Is there a remainder? If there's not a remainder, that means it's divided evenly. Right? Which then means it's not prime. Because prime is only 1 and itself. Okay? Okay, I'm pausing because I just want it to like marinate. All right. So now we're going to do an else statement. So now we're saying if it's not prime, if it's not is prime, which is the opposite, right? And the player's guess is 0, right? That means they all were correct. So now let's do our else statement. So the else is they were wrong, right? The number, let's put the number in here. What's it's my random number, right? Let's make this an F string. F string. So I'm going to say random number. Okay. Everyone see what I just did there? My random number is prime. If is prime, what am I doing here? What the heck did I do? Oh, I see. All right. So I'm saying the random number is prime if is prime, which means if it's true, otherwise not prime. So what I'm saving myself from doing here is 2 different print statements and 2 different else's. So it's going to print here. If it's prime, it's going to say this is prime. If it's not the else here, if it's not prime, change what's after the comma to not prime. Okay. So now what? Now we should run it. See if it works. I hope. Oh, what am I doing here? This is prime, right? Okay, so, oh wait. It gave me an error because when I named my file, instead of doing a prime.py, I did prime_py. So, Miles.
Yes, when you're doing the if is prime on line 19, is that not a part of your F string?
It is part of my F string. And see here, let's change this to, this is why doing a double and single quotes is important. There you go.
So then when you have to have the curly brackets around is prime?
Yes. Okay. Cool. Let me put this. This is. Okay, so the is a string, right? I'm just going to put this. The random number is not as. I'm just going to see what this does, but I've got way too many quotes in my thing here going. Okay. That's correct. What's that?
I was gonna say all the extra quotes was throwing me off.
Yeah. Okay, so it's throwing me off too now. Okay, so I've got not prime here. That's a string, which I'm fine with. Okay, this is a variable. Okay. This is a string. This should be a string. And this should be a string. And actually, I made everything an F string. So now I don't know if this is going to work. So all right, let's just do it this way first, and then I'll switch it to an F string because now I've messed it all up, and I'll fix it in just a second. Because when you do an F string, you don't need extra quotes, right? So, all right, so I'm going to start with this, and then we'll go back and fix it too. We'll go back and fix the F string. I'll fix that in a second. Okay, so can someone guess if what else is going on here? I forgot my colon. So here, I'm going to make this bigger. Going back to debugging, it's telling me if random number, it's telling me on line 9, okay, if random number modular I equal to 0, it's expecting a colon, right? I didn't have a colon here. So it's telling me it's an if statement. You should have a colon after it, okay? Okay, so let's pick the number 1, and it doesn't tell, I need to print, let's print here. I want to print the prime number. Let's just put the number here for now. I want to know what the number is, right? I mean, there's no point in us not knowing what the number is. And then I'm going to have okay. Do it again. So let's pick 1. Okay, so 91. That's my random number. Is 91 prime?
Yes.
Okay, so 91 is prime. I picked 1, and it's saying 91 is not prime. Is my math wrong? Patrick.
It can be divided by 7, can it?
Yeah, 13
Yes.
times 7 is 91.
Yes. Yeah. I have a math teacher in here. Hello, friends. Okay, so the logic is working. So let's pick 0 this time. Okay, so we have 60. 60 is not prime. Anybody have questions about what I did? And why I used a loop? Kevin.
Yeah, I'm just really confused on the line 8.
Okay, so I remember a prime number is divisible by 1, and it's is only divisible by 1 and itself. Okay, so here I want to figure out between the number 2, because 1, right? Obviously, all numbers are divisible by 1, right? Between 2 and the square root of that number. Okay, to make the math easier and to make it shorter, if it's divisible by itself, we know it's divisible by itself, right? So that's already a definition of prime, right? So I'm only going to iterate. So let's pretend this is, I'm going to use 49 again. So in the case of 49, it's going to say for I in range of 2, and then it's going to calculate here it's calculating the square root of 49, and then it's going to add 1. Okay, so it'll do 7 plus 1. Okay, so that is 8, which means that it'll do 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, because when you're doing range, it does not include the last number. Okay, so I want to divide by 7. So now I want to figure out, is that random number divisible by the iterator that I'm on, and is the remainder 0?
So is it gonna divide all those numbers?
It's okay, so it'll stay 49. Is it divisible by 3? Well, is it divisible by 2? Right?
Mhm.
And then is there a remainder? So there is a remainder, right? 49 is an odd number divided by 2. There's going to be a remainder, right?
Right.
So it changes the prime, that is prime, to false, right?
Right.
And then it stops.
Okay, that makes sense.
Once it finds a false, it's going to stop. As long as this is true, it's going to continue. It's going to stay true. But once it's false, right, it's going to stop.
Okay,
Okay, Eugene,
thank you.
you're welcome.
Could you just I just want to see it written out, the square root instead of the long way.
Oh yeah, it's so you would do SQRT like this.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I know it makes it confusing to get the other way.
No, I
But
mean,
I wanted to show you guys how to do it without knowing the function, the shortcut, right?
Gotcha. Thank you again.
You're welcome. Okay, so what questions can I answer? Okay, nobody has questions. I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, Patrick.
Sorry, I was just wondering, like, what is the purpose of that last else statement?
Oh,
Oh, never mind. You're right. I gotcha.
No, it's to show you guys what you can do, like the variations of if and else, right? I embedded the if else in a different variation than you guys normally see. I embedded it inside of a print statement. I said the number is prime, right? I used a comma there, right? If is prime, which if this is true, otherwise change prime to not prime. I just wanted to show you guys a different way of doing an if-else statement in a print statement.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Is that the line that we kept changing? That was an F string to begin
Yeah, I
with?
know. I'll fix this in an F string.
No, because
Yes,
okay. So
yes.
I think somebody asked me if that's what you meant to do, and I answered them incorrectly. So yes, you can make a if statement inside a print statement. I think it was James that asked me, right?
Yeah. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm going to put this code into the random channel, into the resource channel, and you guys can play around with the code. I can stop sharing. You guys can ask questions about other stuff. If someone wants to share code and debug, I'm happy to do that.
Asha, when you were doing your first lecture with for loops and string,
Mhm.
there was you remember there was a question when you wrote your output was like Python, each letter on a different line.
Yes.
And there was a question about
The character and strings.
yeah, getting a different output. Paul wants to know how that for loop can be changed to get that output. Paul, you can explain.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to share.
Wait, was this the thing in the very beginning that I just tagged you in, Jess?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think the easiest way is to just create a new variable using the split function and then run through the for loop that way, rather than having to define the range based on each word.
Yeah, you can also do split, like, yeah, you would use split or and then say that I want to split it at use the split function and say that for every time you reach a space, print. Split it.
Oh, I see.
You
So
can
don't-
define what character you're splitting it by.
Okay. Then would that mean that you don't need to create a separate variable first before looping through? You can just embed that into the loop formula?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, so can I ask you another question?
No. Yes,
All
of
right.
course you
Word. So the days assignment,
can.
you said to wait for the lecture, and
Yep.
I waited, and
Yep.
during the break I was looking through it.
Mhm.
I still can't sort out what the issue is because
Look at your for loop.
for loops. All right. All
What
of
are
them?
you calling in your for loop? You want to share it?
Sure.
Jess, you can stop recording.
Okay.